Good day, and thank you for joining Black Agenda Report. I'm Margaret Kimberly. Please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and read blackagendareport.com. Our guest is Abayomi Azikiwe, editor of the Pan-African Newswire. He's been a Black Agenda Report guest many times for his expert analysis on African nations. But Abayomi is also a Michigander, a Michigan resident, and he's in Detroit. And he's also been a local activist for many years. And I reached out to talk to him about politics in that state, as Dr. Abdul El-Sayed won the Democratic primary for a Senate seat, defeating the establishment choice Haley Stevens. This is part of a larger trend of insurgent, more left-leaning candidates defeating Democrats who have party endorsements and large campaign war chests. Why did Dr. El-Sayed win? Abayomi Azikiwe will provide us with this local analysis. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you once again for the invitation. This has been a very, very contested election. What we saw, for example, in New York State, first with the election of the current mayor there, Mamdani, whose father, in fact, I was studying his work, scholarly work, way back in the 1980s, 1990s. Dr. Mahmoud Mamdani. He's a Marxist, Ugandan social scientist. He taught at the University of Dar es Salaam. So that gives you some background information in regard to the social context in which your mayor came out of. But this is a pattern that's been happening across the United States. Appears to be an electoral insurgency inside the Democratic Party, a response to the pro-Israeli, pro-imperialist, pro-war themes that have permeated the Democratic Party for many years. So the professor and Dr. El-Sayed was, of course, an insurgent candidate. He had, some say, $60 to $70 million spent to try to destroy his campaign. There were constant television commercials, constant social media posts. I received so many letters as a registered voter in the city of Detroit. I received all these posts and kicker cards denouncing him, saying he had disrespected the former First Lady Michelle Obama, saying that she was ineffective in terms of her role as First Lady. They also said that he had insulted women on the job and so forth. And there were women, many women in his campaign who supported him. Then they went into the whole accusation that he's anti-Semitic, he's sympathetic to, quote, terrorists, unquote. So all of this has been going on now for months. And Haley Stevens, who was in the U.S. Congress, she was trying to step up the political ladder by running for Senate, but she's heavily endorsed and funded by the American Israeli Political Action Committee. And she made no secret about it, to the point where on May Day in Detroit at Roosevelt Park, she was literally run out of the park, by people. And it was the Jewish Voice for Peace. Now, I didn't see this. This is what I just heard, who were adamant that she should not be allowed to speak at May Day in Detroit. So this is a big shift politically in terms of the labor unions, which endorsed his candidacy, as well as others who came out, Jewish Americans as well. So it's been a very interesting week.
Well, yes, to say the least. Why do you think these charges, by the way, did he insult Michelle Obama? Is there any truth to that?
No, I don't think so. And, he said she was ineffective. Well, a lot of people would say that.
Well,
the comments she made about African-American girls, that they should eat better and all this kind of stuff. Well, give people money. To eat healthy in the United States takes money. To eat unhealthy is cheaper.
Yes, it is. I didn't want to digress, but it's so interesting how we see the same playbook where
Yeah.
a social media post or a comment is elevated as if it's a political statement in order to discredit someone. Why do
Yes.
you think he ended up being the more attractive, despite the attacks, despite the fact that Haley Stevens, his opponent, had so much more money? Why do you think he ended up winning?
I think that, particularly among young people, that attitudes are changing. That even now, labor organizations such as the UAW, which in the past would never say even a whisper against the foreign policies of the United States, particularly the policies, domestic policies and foreign policies of the state of Israel. They just did not touch it. And way back in 1973, there was a picket line and a strike that united mainly Yemeni and other Arab American workers with African American workers. And they had a one-day strike. And they also picketed an event, a UAW event, where the previous head, Leonard Woodcock, was being awarded, I believe, by one of the leading Jewish organizations. So this is the attitude that is changing. Now, what they had also attempted to do was to divide the African American electorate against those who supported the doctor. And this, among the older voters, had some impact. And but the reality is, in the city of Detroit, which is an overwhelmingly African American predominant city, only 20 to 23% of the people who are registered to vote came out on Tuesday. And this is typical in a city that's been impoverished, that's been a victim of globalization and privatization for decades. So most of the people who come out to vote are older people, people over 50, 60, 70 years old. They have a greater tendency to come out to vote. But among younger African Americans, it was in favor of El-Sayed. So it shows that there's a generational debate or divide that's going on, and it's cutting across, I think, racial lines.
Yes, we've seen this pattern. You mentioned Mamdani's mayoral election, some
Yeah.
primaries here in New York City with candidates he's backed, and in other parts of the country. But there's, I think, a bigger thing going on, and I think the Democratic Party is losing legitimacy very rapidly. What do you think that's true?
Yeah, they definitely have a identity crisis, so to speak, and a political, ideological crisis. And we saw, like, for what happened, for example, in St. Louis, where Cori Bush lost, to Wesley Bell, and they wanted to do the same thing here in terms of the Democratic senatorial race, as well as the race for the 13th district of the U.S. Congress. They have South Asian American Sri Tanadar, who had won twice. He stepped into a political vacuum here in the city of Detroit. Detroit now only has one congressional district because of the population loss and the domination of right-wing elements in the state legislature who have redrawn districts. There's been some pushback against that. But Sri had also been a recipient. People in Palestine arose. He refused to even call for a ceasefire. I was at a demonstration that had that was called by the Jewish Voice for Peace outside his office in downtown Detroit. And they said he wasn't there. They sent out some aides who said that he was for a humanitarian pause in the fighting. But he had issued a statement saying that the Egyptian government should open its borders at the Rafah crossing to allow the Palestinians to cross out of their own country into Egypt. This is absolutely outrageous. So I think this unconditional support for the Israeli government, for U.S. foreign policy towards West Asia and North Africa is starting to backfire. on the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. I found it interesting that even people like Tucker Carlson, for example, who had been, staunch right-wing propagandists, are now questioning the state of Israel. For the wrong reasons, of course, but this does cause some consternation. Candace Owens, for example, I've read comments from her, questioning the policies of the Israeli government. I don't know what this is really about and what direction it's going, but it shows a crack, in this unconditional support for the Israeli government, and particularly within the African American community. People like Hakeem Jeffries, for example, who's the minority chair of the Democratic caucus in the House of Representatives, is a staunch supporter of Israel. He's a staunch supporter of the Ukraine government, which has fascist elements within it. So how long can this be sustained politically? That's what I'm thinking at this point.
Well, Hakeem Jeffrey, I mean, that's how you get that position, right? That's why he's House Minority Leader. You have to be vetted, and Israel is one of the top issues for the Democratic Party establishment. I mean, so much so that Haley Stevens in the Michigan race in remarks even said she dreamed about Israel. I mean, I guess perhaps she was being honest and thinking that support and all that money from Zionist donors would get her across the finish line. But Cori Bush, she actually lost again. She tried to run against Wesley Bell and unfortunately was defeated. But I want to talk to you about Michigan itself. Michigan is one of the so-called Rust Belt states where the deindustrialization devastated the economy for decades now, for a long time. You mentioned the loss of population. And so people are concerned about, I actually don't like the term, the bread and butter issues, the economic issues that impact people in their daily lives. And no one in the political establishment is speaking to them. I remember in 2024, the Democrats would always say, if people said we're struggling, they'd say, no, you're not. The economic indicators are good. And the disappearance, some of those COVID programs that helped so many people just disappeared without a whimper from the Biden administration. So I think it's an issue that I don't think is discussed enough, but I imagine that played a part in the outcome of this primary race.
Most definitely. And reminds me of the neo-Keynesian economics that was being taught in the universities, even in the 1970s, about the so-called dilemma between guns and butter in terms of economic policy. So the Democrats believe they could have both guns and butter. And it's just not working out. And Trump, it's quite interesting, the reports that have come out, even in the Financial Times newspaper, that they're running out of long-range missiles, that they didn't even plan for this current aggressive campaign that they're waging. And they've had to institute a pause against bombing Iran. Plus, it has backfired once again on them. People in this country cannot afford to buy food. They can't afford to put gasoline in their cars. The rents are going up. Education costs and fees are escalating. These are the issues that people are concerned about. And the Republican Party, their position is that there's nothing wrong with the economy. Everything is fine. So that's going to be a major issue in the general elections. Mike Rogers, who is a Trump supporter who has been endorsed by Trump, is going to run to win the gubernatorial position in November. So we'll see. It's been a while since the Republicans have been in office. Rick Snyder, he was the one that instituted the emergency management laws and poisoned the water in Flint and engineered massive water shutoffs in Detroit. So I don't think people want to go back to the period of Rick Snyder.
And You mentioned that former governor, the current, she's Attorney General, General Nessel, correct?
Yeah, she's the attorney general. Yes.
Who let the Flint water poisoners off scot-free. She claimed she was afraid because she's Jewish and she's afraid of protests, so she wasn't going to show up for a public event. But she has other reasons to be concerned, one of which I mentioned was how she handled or didn't handle Flint and the water being contaminated. Does that issue still resonate with voters in Michigan?
It does. And the people in Flint still have not been made whole. There are people who have died as a result of what they did to the people in Flint, the majority of whom are Black people. And nobody was ever held accountable on a criminal level. The former governor, Rick Snyder, he was only charged with a misdemeanor, and that was even dismissed. So they can engage in poisoning, literally, tens of thousands of people, and there's no recrimination. In terms of there's no response from the criminal justice system. Yet you have people in state detention facilities, immigration facilities here at North Lake. In the state of Michigan, 5 women have died in detention at the Huron Valley Women's Prison. It's the only prison in the state of Michigan that houses women, and the conditions there are deplorable. So this is what's going on in the United States at this time. It's not just against migrants. These women who are in Huron Valley are considered U.S. citizens, and yet they're being treated in a horrible fashion.
Well, citizenship rights for, I'm assuming they're Black, were they? The women who died?
Some were white and some were Black. Yeah, so it's really amazing.
I was going to say our citizenship rights don't mean a lot, especially for Black people, but the whole issue of mass incarceration and people being incarcerated for minor offense, 2 million people, more people behind bars than any other country in the world, is an issue that is obviously not discussed enough. But I wanted to ask you about El-Sayed and his. He was always, whenever he was interviewed, he was asked about, do you hate Jews? Do you hate Israel? Does Israel have a right to exist? And he very deftly answered those questions. He said, do you think Palestine has a right to exist? Do you think those people have a right to live? And it was a reflection of the mood of the country, which has turned against a genocide, turned against, even as people here are struggling, that millions of dollars or billions are going to a country which is carrying out acts that most people just find, there's just revulsion about Israel's action. And you mentioned the fact the U.S. doesn't have as many missiles as it thought it needed, and that's because of Ukraine since
exactly
2022. So there are these contradictions for the system, but it all boils down to people who are angry about their situation and are willing to take a chance and do something different, except for Black people. And you touched on this, older Black voters sticking with Democratic establishment figures, while younger people are willing to take a chance to have something new. And it concerns me, and this is something that we see across the country. When Mamdani first ran in the primary, he did not get most Black votes. He did in the general election, however. Black voters, I think, tend to be risk averse. And as you said, it's older people who tend to vote more. But I have many different opinions about electoral politics and what it can and can't do for us. But most of our people are still active in electoral politics. But it concerns me that Black people will, as Glenn Ford used to say, be the last ones off the sinking ship. and I believe, has been proven right. What are your? I think I may have rambled there, but what are your thoughts about what I said?
Yes, I see electoral politics as an element, of a broader struggle towards liberation and social emancipation, and that is a tactic, just like a mass demonstration or a boycott, or doing alternative media. It is not the entire breadth and depth, of what needs to be done at this point in the United States. But emphasizing these questions, I believe, does illustrate the character of national oppression and economic exploitation in the United States. I mean, the fact that they're willing to go back 60 years or more in repealing key elements of the Voting Rights Act shows that it was never secure, and that something deeper has to be achieved and won and implemented to guarantee the continuance of even elemental bourgeois democratic rights, like the right to vote, the right to have due process under the law. Otherwise, you go back to the Dred Scott decision of 1857, that we have no right that a white man is bound to respect. So I think that's the attitude of this administration, and people have to do something to stave off that level of repression, and not even recognizing African people as being human.
You mentioned the Voting Rights Act, and I'm sure you're familiar with Kamala Harris's comments about it. I wrote about it this week, and she was asked should have been a softball question, I think, at the National Urban League about the Voting Rights Act, which, as you pointed out, the enforcement provisions have been gutted. And she was very nonchalant about it. She said, well, I don't think that should be our priority. This administration isn't going to do it. Congress isn't going to do it. But I think she let the cat out of the bag. I think it's not a priority for the Democratic Party establishment, which wants and needs Black people's votes, but will not stand up to protect our rights. What are your thoughts about that?
Yes, and there has to be a realignment. I mean, we can prefigure that, or see the prefigurement of it in some of these recent electoral campaigns involving the Democratic Party. The fact that in Detroit, they're claiming that 60% of the people in Detroit voted for Haley Stevens in the primary, and 40% voted for Saeed. So I'm thinking, if that's the case, in consideration, but at the same time, they're saying they don't have accurate data so far in terms of exit polls. They haven't sifted through all the information as of yet, but these appear to be estimates. But even if it's true, for example, the fact that 40% of the electorate could be peeled away, from the pro-Israeli Democratic establishment position, pro-war positions, that encompass Islamophobia and other, racist attitudes. So I'm thinking that shows that there's a limitation to what they're doing, because you have to be here to see the constant commercials, saying every horrible thing about him. They threw everything at him. And also Donovan McKinney won the 13th district. He's African American, and I think he's part of the Democratic Socialists of America. And there were other DSA candidates that won as well around the state. The mayor of Ann Arbor. So hopefully it'll have a direct impact on people.
And lastly, before we close, I'm never sad when someone defies AIPAC and wins. I'm always happy to see that happen. But El-Sayed, he has fallen into this trap of a lot of left Democrats in being right-wing on foreign policy. He said he still supporting Ukraine. He said after they kidnapped President Maduro in Venezuela that he was a thug. This is something that has to stop. I think leftists can't just give Mamdani did something similar, talking about Cuba and Venezuela when he was running. And we can't just give folks a pass if they are on the correct side about Israel or domestic policy. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, that has to be called out because I remember when Bernie Sanders was running in 2020, in one of the debates, they asked him about the character of the socialism he was advocating. And he said, well, he wasn't advocating the socialism that they have in Cuba. He was talking about the socialism really in the imperialist countries, in Scandinavian countries where they have national health insurance and so forth. He mentioned the UK, but that's such a contradiction, that the socialism that has come out of the oppressed nations, he doesn't support. So they're going to have to clear that up because it's going to collapse just like the pro-Israeli positions have collapsed.
Yes, they will. And the Scandinavian countries are firmly with the U.S.
Within
and
NATO.
are actually undermining their social programs that everybody brags about all the time. They're undoing them.
Yeah, he needs to, follow what's going on in England. The National Health Service has serious problems. They had strikes among the junior doctors, the consultants, nurses. They're not investing enough in healthcare. And now the U.S. has demanded that they spend more on military equipment. So it's going to be a serious problem. And Ukraine, they have run out of these defensive missiles. So the reports from like the BBC and Sky News today is that the damage from these drones and missiles being launched by the Russian Federation are doing extensively more damage because they don't have supplies. They've been asking for Patriot missiles, as everybody recalls, and they still have not gotten them.
Well, I thank you so much, Abayomi.
Okay.
I'll have you back. It's our first non-African discussion. And we know that folks should go to Pan-African Newswire to see your work there. Is there anyone you can suggest or organizations that folks can follow in Michigan to follow this election and other news?
Yeah, you could, the Moratorium Now Coalition, you could follow their Facebook page. There's also the local organizations, even the local DSA chapter here has, probably 1,000 members, and they're doing a lot. You could check their websites, their social media sites. There are many grassroots organizations as well as nonprofit organizations. They're going to be working around this election. I think this was key in the primary election because you just can't throw money at people today and expect a significant number of them to respond. So they have people on the ground knocking on doors, doing social media posts, holding meetings with community organizations, going to cultural events and so forth. And that could outstrip television ads every 5 minutes, and people just turn you off.
Well, that's real democracy. You just described organizing, which is what democracy is supposed to be about, not just having fake elections that are predetermined because somebody has more money than someone else. So this is what many of us have wanted to see, and it's I believe it's very good news. Thank you so much, Abayomi. It's been a pleasure having you back.